The war had burned the skies for 5 years now, across hundreds of planets. Machines and men fought non-stop, but on Base 9, deep in the red desert of Xylan, something strange had arrived, something alive. It came in a metal prison box. The guards walked beside it, their rifles shaking. Inside the box stood a creature, 8 feet tall, with dark blue skin and glowing white eyes. Chains wrapped around its arms, legs, and neck, not because it fought, but because people feared it. The soldiers whispered among themselves. "That's a Varkal," one said. "They eat humans," another added. It broke 3 soldiers' bones with one move. None of them knew the truth. No one even dared to ask, but Private Kane stood apart from the crowd. He was young, just 23, but his eyes carried a weight heavier than most, while others laughed or cursed. Kane just stared at the box. Something inside him pulled him toward it. Box stopped near the central lab. Engineers surrounded it, trying to study the creature, but the alien didn't move, didn't speak, didn't even blink. It just stood there, like a statue, like it was waiting for something. Kane found himself walking closer. "Hey," a soldier shouted, "stay back. It's dangerous." But Kane kept walking. He wasn't afraid, not exactly. It was something else. A voice inside his head, or maybe his heart, whispered, "Go." He stood in front of the alien, just a few steps away. The alien slowly raised its head. Its eyes met Kane's, not angry, not violent, just calm. And in that moment, everything changed. Kane felt a strange pressure in his chest, like something old had awakened. He didn't know the alien, but he didn't feel like a stranger. He felt connected deeply, silently. The alien blinked once, then tilted its head slightly, like it recognized him. But that was impossible. They had never met, had they? Behind Kane, soldiers loaded their weapons. One of them shouted, "Back away now, Private." But Kane didn't move, neither did the alien. They just looked at each other. 2 warriors from 2 worlds, and nothing else existed. Later that night, the base was silent. The alien remained inside its energy cell. No food, no water. It just stood still. Kane couldn't sleep. That feeling, that strange connection, kept pulling at him. So he walked out of the sleeping quarters and made his way back to the lab. The guards were tired, half asleep. He slipped past them. He stood outside the glass wall, watching the creature again. And then something unexpected happened. The alien moved only slightly, but it was enough. It turned its head and looked at Kane again. Then it raised one hand slowly and placed it against the glass. Kane froze. His heart pounded. But then he stepped forward and pressed his hand against the same spot. Glass between them. A quiet hum passed through the wall, faint but clear. Not a sound, more like a feeling. A warm vibration ran up Kane's arm and settled in his chest. He saw something, just for a second. A vision, flashes of another planet, tall mountains, silver rivers, creatures flying in the air, and the alien standing with others of its kind, peaceful, strong, proud. Then the vision was gone. Kane stumbled back. His breath was shaking, his hands cold. The alien lowered its hand. It didn't smile, but something in its eyes had changed. It had seen into Kane, and Kane had seen into it from the shadows. A voice shouted, "What are you doing here?" Guards ran in, grabbed Kane by the arms. He didn't resist. Colonel Redden appeared minutes later. "Are you trying to get yourself killed, Private?" he barked. Kane didn't answer. The colonel looked at the alien, then at Kane. "You stay away from that thing," he ordered. "It's not a pet, it's a weapon." Kane looked one last time through the glass. The alien didn't move, but its eyes followed him as Kane was dragged away. One thought echoed in his mind. This was not the enemy. This was something more. And deep inside that 8-foot alien giant, a spark had been lit. For the first time since it was captured, it remembered why it came here and who it was looking for. Asterisk. They say silence is empty, but that night, silence was full of questions, full of echoes, full of something no one could explain. The desert winds outside the base howled softly. Inside, Private Kane sat on his bed, eyes open, heart still racing. He couldn't forget the way that giant Alien looked at him, not with hate, not with fear, but with something deeper, something familiar across the base, behind electric glass and layered steel. The alien stood motionless, but it was not asleep. Its eyes were wide open, glowing faintly in the dark, and it remembered Kane, not just his face, his energy. That moment of contact had triggered something ancient, something sacred. Morning came cold and fast. Soldiers moved like machines, drills, reports, orders, but Kane moved like a man who had seen something too real to explain. His mind wasn't here anymore. It was with the vision, the silver rivers, the flying creatures, the peace. Colonel Redden kept his eyes on Kane. Something about that boy bothered him now. He had reviewed the security footage all night. He saw the glass glow. He saw Kane's hand tremble. He saw the alien move gently, like it cared. That wasn't normal. That wasn't protocol, and that was dangerous. Kane was assigned to guard duty near the lab that day. A cruel joke, maybe, or maybe a test. Either way, he accepted the post silently. He stood again outside the same glass wall. The alien was still inside, chained, watched, and yet. Calm. Hours passed. The guards changed, but Kane remained. He took a deep breath, looked around, and slowly reached into his pocket. He pulled out a folded piece of paper, a sketch he had drawn the night before. The alien's face, the memory vision, and strange symbols that had flashed in his mind. He held the paper against the glass. The alien blinked once, then twice. Then it moved slowly and walked toward the window. Its chains rattled, but its steps were smooth. It stopped just inches from the glass. Then, to Kane's surprise, the alien did something unexpected. It sat down cross-legged, calm, like it was ready to listen. Kane sat down too, separated by glass and fear. But closer than ever, he began drawing more shapes on the paper. Symbols, stars, circles, waves. The alien watched with deep focus. Then, using its chained finger, it began tracing the same symbols on the floor. The match was perfect. A silent language had begun. 1 hour turned into 2. They didn't speak. They didn't need to. Through gestures, symbols, and small shared images, they began to understand. The alien's name was Rovell, a warrior, yes, but also a protector. His kind, the Varkal, had lived in balance with nature until humans came, and war followed. Kane didn't defend his people. He didn't explain. He just listened. That alone was enough. Suddenly, the room lights turned red. A siren echoed through the base. Containment breach in Sector 4. All guards, report immediately. Kane jumped up. The alien stood too. Just then, a large blast hit the side wall. Smoke filled the room. Sparks fell from the ceiling. From the chaos, a mechanical spider-like drone entered the lab. It had gone rogue. Its red eye scanned everything, then locked onto Kane. The drone fired, but the shot never landed. Massive force knocked Kane to the side. He hit the floor hard, but a liver. Hovell stood between him and the drone, chains still on, but body in motion. He let out a sound, not a roar, not a scream, something like a calling tone, high and deep, ancient and powerful. The drone paused, sensors confused, and in that moment, Rovell moved fast with one chained arm. He struck the drone's central core. The machine collapsed. Lifeless smoke cleared. Alarms stopped, and Kane looked up, eyes wide. The alien had saved him again. Colonel Redden arrived moments later with armed soldiers. They froze when they saw the destroyed drone, and Kane, still breathing. Rovell didn't fight. He stood tall, quiet, waiting. The colonel stared hard at Kane. You think it protected you because they called it dead tech. A strange black object found on the battlefield. No wires, no buttons, no screen. Just smooth stone like metal. No one could open it. No one could scan it. Every tool failed. Every scientist gave up until he touched it. Kane wasn't even supposed to be near the artifact. It was kept in the high-security vault, deep under Base 9. But ever since his bond with the alien, Rovell, something had changed. He could feel the artifact before he saw it, like it was calling him, softly, steadily, like a heartbeat in the dark. That morning, he was ordered to report to Vault 3. They said it was a test, but Kane knew better. They were watching him now, every move, every breath, tracked inside the vault. The black object sat in the center of the room. Cold lights glowed above it. Scientists stood behind glass walls, taking notes. Whispering, Kane walked closer. He didn't speak, he didn't blink. The air around the object felt different, thicker, alive then. It happened as Kane reached out. The object lit up, not bright, just a soft blue pulse. Like it recognized him, gasps came from behind the glass. Machines beeped, cameras focused. He placed his hand on the surface, and everything disappeared. The vault was gone. The base was gone. Kane stood on a mountain of light. Stars moved around him. Wind without sound passed through his body, and standing in front of him was Rovell, but it wasn't just a vision, it was real somehow. They were both inside this space, a mind space, created by the ancient tech. Kane looked around. Images floated in the sky, memories, thoughts, voices, planets. Rovell spoke, not with words, but with feeling, and Kane understood the object was not a weapon. It was a key, a living key to something far older than war. Something buried deep within both their races. Rovell showed him the past, a time before the war, when Varkle and humans had shared knowledge, before betrayal, before greed. Kane saw Earth from far away, not the Earth he knew, but one in peace. Then he saw fire, ships falling from the sky, cities burning, and behind it all, the face of a human general, not Rovell's. People. His Kane stepped back, breath shaking. What is this? Why are you showing me this? Rovell's voice came, calm and deep. Because you're the only one who can change it. Suddenly the stars cracked, light broke around him, and Kane snapped back into the vault, falling to the floor. The black object was still glowing under his hand, but this time it began to open. The top peeled back like petals. Inside was a small crystal, floating, humming softly. The scientists shouted. Alarms blared. Soldiers stormed in. Colonel Redden pushed through the crowd. He saw Kane holding the crystal. The artifact opened. His face darkened. You touched alien tech without orders. You broke protocol. Kane stood slowly. I didn't break anything, he said. It opened for me. Redden looked at the scientists. Can anyone else activate it? They all shook their heads. It only responds to him, one whispered. The colonel stared hard at Kane. Something cold moved behind his eyes. Take him to isolation. No. One of the researchers said, this could be historic, the first human-alien tech merge. You can't just shut it down. Redden turned. I said, take him. Kane was dragged away, crystal still humming softly in his hands, and deep inside him, something had changed. That mind space wasn't just memory, it was connection. He had felt Rovell's soul. He had felt ancient pain and ancient power. He was no longer just a soldier. He was now something more, and somewhere far across the base, inside his cell, Rovell opened his eyes. His chest glowed with the same blue light. The merge had begun, and nothing would be the same again. Asterisk. They told him it was just a dream. They said the visions were side effects of exposure. But Kane knew they were lying, because dreams don't leave marks on your skin, and dreams don't speak your name in a voice older than time. Ever since he touched the crystal, Kane hadn't been the same. He could hear echoes in places where there was no sound. He could feel warmth where nothing touched him. And worst of all, he could see memories that were not his. It began 3 nights ago. He closed his eyes and opened them in another world, a world that wasn't destroyed by war, a world where trees reached the skies, and rivers sang when wind passed through them, where Varkle lived in silence and harmony, not as beasts, not as weapons, but as guardians. He stood in the middle of their great city, tall structures made of living stone and light and standing. In front of him was Rovell, but not in chains. He was young, unscarred, smiling. This was before the war. Kane walked through the memory like a ghost. He saw the children of Varkle, floating stones with their minds. He saw a council of elders meditating. In deep light, he saw humans arriving in ships, greeted with open hands. Not weapons. The first contact had been peaceful. They shared technology, ideas and language. But then something changed. Another vision came, darker, sharper humans sitting in secret meetings. A new general had arrived, not for peace, but for power. He studied the Varkal tech, called it dangerous. He gave orders to take, not trade. Kane saw human soldiers entering sacred temples. He saw fire burning through forests that had lived for thousands of years. He saw Rovell screaming as his people were captured. His city turned to smoke, and he felt it, every emotion. Grief, loss, betrayal. He woke up gasping. His chest felt like it had been cut open. His hands were shaking, but he remembered everything. The war hadn't started because of fear. It had started because of greed. The Varkal didn't attack first. They defended what little they had left. Kane sat alone in the corner of his small isolation room. The walls were white. The cameras never blinked. He hadn't spoken to anyone in 2 days. He didn't need to, because every time he closed his eyes, Rovell spoke to him, not in full words, but through memory, through feeling. One morning, the lights flickered, the door hissed open. Colonel Redden entered, followed by 2 guards. "You've been quiet," the colonel said. Voice cold. Kane didn't answer. "I reviewed your test results." Redden continued, "That thing, that alien, has somehow linked itself to your brain." Kane looked up slowly. "He has a name," he said. "Rovell." Redden stepped closer. "You don't understand what you're playing with. Private. These creatures are killers." "No," Kane replied. "We are." The colonel froze. "You saw something," he said carefully. Kane nodded. "I saw the truth, and you knew it all along." Redden's face didn't move, but his silence said enough. "You're scared," Kane said, "because if people find out, this war ends, and so does your control." The colonel turned to leave. "Enjoy your dreams, soldier. You'll stay here until they fade." But they weren't fading. They were growing stronger that night. Kane dreamed again, but this time, it wasn't Rovell's past. It was the future. He saw 2 paths in one. Earth burned, humans and Varkal both lost. In the other, a new bond formed, not just between Kane and Rovell, but between their people. And in the center of both paths stood him when he woke up. His room was different. There were symbols on the floor, glowing softly, and Kane. Some prisons don't need bars. Some chains don't need metal. Base 9 had become a cage, not just for Rovell, but for Kane. 2 locked in white rooms, watched by cold eyes, fed lies dressed as orders. But the bond between them was no longer quiet. It spoke now louder than words. That night, Kane stood at the sink, pretending to wash his face, but his eyes stared into the mirror, and what he saw wasn't himself anymore. It was something new, stronger, awake on the other side of the base. Rovell sat in silence, hands chained, body still, but inside, energy burned. His eyes blinked once, and Kane blinked at the same time. No camera saw it, but a signal passed between them, not through machines, but through the merge. Tonight they moved. As one, Kane placed his hand on the wall. His fingertips glowed for a second, and the metal underneath hissed softly. Unlocking, the guard walked by. Didn't notice a thing. Rovell stood now. His chains pulsed blue. Not tight anymore. They didn't resist, as if the metal remembered who he was. One by one, the locks clicked open. First Kane's door, then Rovell's cage. Neither of them ran. They walked, slow, calm, like shadows in a storm. The base was silent, but not asleep. Down in Sector 4, alarms were waiting, silent triggers ready to scream. Kane passed a sensor. Nothing happened. The system didn't see him anymore. He was rewritten. Rovell reached the lab corridor. 2 guards spotted him, guns raised. "Freeze!" But before they could fire, Kane stepped between them from the shadows. They hesitated. "You're under arrest, Private Kane." But Kane lifted his hand. A wave of force, unseen, silent, pushed both guards back without a touch. They hit the wall, not dead, not hurt, but out. Rovell looked at Kane. The glow between them grew brighter. Then the alarms exploded. Lights turned red. Metal doors began to slam shut, but it was too late. They were already moving. Kane grabbed a weapon from the wall, not to shoot, just to block. Rovell lifted a fallen blast shield and used it like armor. They stormed through corridors like water through cracks. Every door that closed, opened, every system that locked, broke. The bond didn't just connect them, it empowered. Then Colonel Redden stood in the command center. He watched the cameras, one by one. Turning to static, "This isn't escape," he growled. "This is invasion." He pressed a button. "Activate Protocol X7, deep underground." A hidden chamber came alive, a weapon. Not human, not Varkal, but something built in secret, built from stolen alien tech, built to kill beings like Rovel's. Red eyes lit up, and it started climbing to the surface. Kane and Rovel reached the outer hangar. Just one gate stood between them and open sky, but behind them, the floor cracked open. From the smoke rose the prototype, 10 feet tall, armed with twin cannons, voice cold. Target locked, bond detected, destroy both. It fired. Kane jumped. Rovel shielded him. A blast hit his shoulder, smoke, sparks, pain, but he didn't fall. He roared, not in anger, but in defiance, the same roar from the ancient vision. The roar that once shook mountains. Kane lifted both hands. Energy from the merge burst out, blue lightning that struck the machine straight in the chest. The prototype staggered. Rovel charged. Kane followed. Together, human and alien, they moved like one. They struck the machine again and again, until it broke into pieces. The gate opened. Desert wind rushed and freedom was one step away. Soldiers filled the hangar, guns aimed. Kane turned. "No more," he said, voice steady. His body lit up, blue lines across his arms, neck and eyes. The soldiers hesitated. He raised his hand and every weapon powered down one by one. The rifles dropped from shaking hands. No one moved. Kane turned to Rovel. He nodded once. They stepped out into the night, not as fugitives, not as enemies, but as something new. And as the stars opened above them, Base 9 was left behind. But the war, the truth, the real test was just beginning. Asterisk. They walked for hours, but time didn't follow them. The desert didn't speak, but it remembered, and somewhere between the silence and the stars, the gate appeared, not made of metal, not built by hands, but grown. Like a scar in the skin of the planet, it rose from the earth in complete stillness. Black stone, smooth as water, tall as a ship, no doors, no symbols, but it watched them. Kane stopped walking, so did Rovel. They didn't speak, because the bond between them pulsed like a heartbeat, faster now, louder. This was the place, the one Rovel had seen in dreams, the one Kane had felt in his chest since the merge began. This was the final gate. It was not a structure, it was a choice. Kane stepped forward. As his boots touched the ground, the stones beneath his feet lit up, not with fire, but with memory. Images appeared in the air, not holograms, not projections, real memories, floating like light. A child from the Varkal species, running through silver fields, a human explorer placing his hand on Varkal soil for the first time. Two races smiling, sharing fire, sharing knowledge. Then the smiles faded. More memories came. Soldiers marching, towers falling, temples burning. A single human general holding the crystal, the same crystal Kane had touched, but he didn't understand it. He tried to control it. And the gate closed forever until Rovel stepped beside Kane. Gate reacted. A low hum spread across the desert, soft at first, then deeper, like thunder inside stone. A path opened straight into the structure. They entered inside. Time slowed, or maybe stopped. They passed walls that held memories instead of carvings, stories written in light. The beginning of the Varkal, their role as watchers of balance, not rulers, not invaders, but guardians of ancient tech left by someone even older. A race now gone, but their warning remained: two minds must merge, or two worlds will fall. Kane stood still. He understood now. The merge between him and Rovel was not an accident, was old, plan guided. He was not just a soldier. Rovel was not just a warrior. They were chosen, not for power but for balance. At the center of the chamber, the air shimmered. A platform rose slowly from the ground. On it, a sphere dark as night, pulsing softly. Rovel placed his hand on the sphere. He looked at Kane. The bond between them flared bright. Kane felt everything, every scream Rovel had held inside, every moment of loneliness, betrayal, fear, but also hope, the belief that peace was not gone. Just buried. Kane placed his hand next to Rovel's. The chamber exploded in light. They were lifted. Not physically, but spiritually, floating through a vision larger than planets. They saw Earth, they saw Varkle, and they saw something else, a shadow stretching between stars. Not machines, not life. Something in between, the real enemy. The war had been a distraction, a curtain, and behind it, this darkness had grown, feeding on fear and blood. The final gate wasn't just a temple, it was a warning system. A last message from the ones who had vanished tonight, or vanished. Kane and Rovel came back to the platform, breathing hard, eyes open and changed. No one else could have entered. No one else could have survived that vision. But they had, because they trusted each other, and now they had a message to carry to both sides, to all races, not just words, not threats, but truth behind them. The chamber closed, but the knowledge had passed into them. Gay had chosen, and the bond was complete as they stepped out into the desert night. The stars above seemed different, closer, alive. The real war hadn't started yet, but the real hope had, and only together could they face what was coming. Some stories begin with battles, some end with them, but this one was never about war. It was about one choice, one soldier, one bond that should never have existed, and yet it did. The skies above Earth had changed. Black storm clouds of energy swirled over the cities, not weather, not nature, something older, something alive. Ships from both sides, human and Varkle, stood ready for war, guns charged, engines hot. No one trusted anyone. All feared the same thing, extinction, and in the center of it all, a single ship landed, small, unarmed. Its doors opened slow. Two figures stepped out, one human, one Varkle. Khan and Rovel. The world went silent. Cameras zoomed in. Soldiers raised weapons. Commanders barked orders, but no one fired, because no one could explain what they were seeing. The glow between Kane and Rovel, the strange light in their eyes, the mark of the merge that now wrapped across both their bodies. Like living armor, they walked forward, not fast, not afraid, just steady. They stopped between the two armies and stood still. Then Kane spoke, not with anger, not with fear, but with a voice that carried weight. "We were never enemies," he said. "We were never meant to fight." He raised his hand and the holograms appeared, direct from the gate, visions of the past. The betrayal, the lies, the real threat hiding in the stars. The crowd watched in silence. Some wept, some turned away, but the truth burned into every screen, every mind, every heart. Then the sky cracked. The darkness they had seen, the enemy behind the curtain, arrived. Not in ships, not in form, but as a wave, pure void. It swallowed satellites, turned metal to dust. It fed on conflict, and Earth was full of it. Panic followed. But Kane didn't run. He turned to Rovel and nodded. They held hands, and the merge ignited. Not just light, not just energy, but memory, emotion, unity. The ground cracked beneath them. A pulse spread in every direction. A shield, not made of tech, but made of bond. The wave hit it and stopped for the first time. The darkness flinched. Kane stepped forward again. "This is not about saving one race," he shouted. "This is about saving all life, and it starts now, with a choice." No command came from either side, but slowly weapons dropped. First one, then 10, then thousands, and as they did, the wave of darkness shrank. It wasn't power that beat it. It was peace. But peace has a price. The merge had begun to burn through Kane's body. Too much energy, too much truth for one human mind. Rovel saw it. He knew what was coming. He grabbed Kane, held him close. Kane looked up, smiling through the pain. "It's worth it," he whispered. "If this ends with peace, it's worth it." Rovel didn't argue. He simply shared the burden. Half the pain, half the light, half the sacrifice. Together, they held the line until the darkness faded and light returned to the skies. 1 year later, there's no more Base 9. There's no human fleet, no Varkle war machines, only the monument, a black stone tower in the middle of a silver field. built from earth soil and Varkal crystalline. Written on it in both languages, they were not the same, but they were equal. One soldier chose peace, and one giant followed. Cain's body was never found. But sometimes on cold nights people say they see two figures walking through the stars, one small, one tall, still watching, still bonded, still, a reminder that sometimes it only takes one human brave enough to understand, and one alien willing to trust to change everything.